name is Judy Baker, and Arnold and I started attending shortly after we moved to Falls Church.
My name is Ann Kress.
And I'm John Chris. We started attending Holy Trinity in the summer of 1967.
We joined in early 1980.
My name is Ursula Irma Jones, and we started attending Holy Trinity 1963.
We signed the visitors book. And wouldn't you know, during the week, there's a knock on the door, and who is it? Pastor Neese. And I was expecting the exterminator, so I opened the door, and good thing he said who he was. So he came in, but I was impressed that he came to visit us, and it was very nice.
When I started dating her, she said, "You're going to church every Sunday with me." It's okay.
Well, you went to church too.
Yeah.
You went to the Presbyterian.
Yeah. Yeah, my mother was a good church woman. The first thing she did when we moved in here, she went up to the church to find out when and how and whatever. Of course, as kids, we didn't want to know because we didn't want to go to church. But I'm glad I didn't miss any of it.
Yeah.
I've been helping for 23 years. I practically lived at church. I did everything that you could think of. Pastor Jane asked me right after I had started there if I would do breakfast with Santa. So I did that for 15 years.
You know, I was in the bell choir, I was in the vocal choir, I taught Sunday school, I superintended Sunday school. I worked with women in the church, altar guild, everything. Just contributed to a very full life. No regrets anywhere.
And it was felt that my job was to keep the conservatives from killing the liberals and the liberals from killing the conservatives that were in that congregation. And there were plenty of them, and they got along very well.
I was a Stephen minister for several years, and I had several care receivers who were abused women. The men Stephen ministers would care for men, and the women would care for women. And I cared for several people who were not Holy Trinity members or attendees. They just needed a Stephen minister.
Remember going to Sunday school, we always went to the house right across the street. Well, no, first we moved the house, and then we went to the little one on the side. That was the next one, and then the big one was built. So I went to all three places.
We're just looking back at my participation in Operation Breakthrough, which was right after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Holy Trinity sent me as a member to a group that was trying to dialogue with African American churches that are along Annandale Road. There are two of them there, a Methodist and a Baptist congregation.
Pastor Jones was a funny one. He was always funny. He would come down and visit us. I just lived down on Adam's place with my mom, dad, and grandparents. and he would come by and visit us, and he'd always come by just about the time dinner time was coming on, and he would come in and sit and talk with us, and he'd go in and say, Grandma, what are you cooking today? He'd open the pots up, look, see what was in them and everything. He was good. I remember him real well. I think I was about 5 years old when we started there. I started there.
You know, we've all heard the story, I think probably of the Afghan ladies who came to arrive in the middle of the church one day. Don and I were ushering. The door opened and these ladies came in. They had these beautiful garments on. My goodness, and we didn't know who they were. In the middle of the service, Pastor Jenny was preaching. And this lady comes in and she sits down, and people slide over in the pews, you know. Then another lady comes in and she sits down. Everybody slide over, making room. And I don't know, there must have been 6 or 8, maybe a dozen of them. And they come in and they sit down and they sing, and some of them take communion. And everybody's not, and then they just leave. And Don goes out and says, who are you? And they said, well, we were passing through on a bus tour, and somebody said, wonder what American churches are like. And so we stopped and came in. But what was so cool was the congregation. Everybody just slid, come in, sit down, make yourself at home. We're happy to see you. It was lovely.
I think doing breakfast with Santa with my grandchildren, it grew and grew and grew and grew. So, yeah, I think that was his most favorite. And then seeing them perform in the bells and the choir. I spent a lot of time there with my grandchildren.
There are just so many. It's hard to choose one, but we loved the family retreats up at Caroline Furnace, where we got to go and stay in cabins and have worship outside, which was always a treat to be in nature. So those were really memorable experiences. So I loved those.
Three services Christmas Eve?
3.
Three. We had 7, 9, and 11 Christmas Eve services. And then we'd have a little get-together in between, if there was much time, and visit with people there. And then I always remember, or our daughter remembers especially, but I remember too, on Easter morning, the organist played the most beautiful Easter music, and everybody would come and sing, and it was just a glorious Easter morning with her there and everything.
I found Holy Trinity on my own by looking around, but it immediately felt like the friendliest of all the churches that I visited. No, I never went any place where they were mean to me or anything, but it just, and I will say this over and over again, it's one of the warmest and most welcoming churches I've ever been to. And you felt that, I felt that from the very beginning.
I guess you could call it the 3 Ps, the pastors and preaching, the people, and the programs. And we've had all 3 in abundance. In all the years we've been members of Holy Trinity, and we've never lacked for just an abundance of skills and competencies and activities in all of those 3 realms, and that's really what I think distinguishes us.
Like I said, this is kind of like a second home. You know, if I know that if I have any problems, I can come here, and there will be no judgment.
But the outstanding thing that we always remember about Larry Cantu is, you know, our kids were not really, our son was never really part of Holy Trinity at all. But every time he came home from college, he knew his name and would say, "Welcome, Kevin." And or when he went up to communion, it was Kevin. He knew, even though he hardly met them, hardly knew them, he remembered their names.
We found 3 Lutheran churches here in Northern Virginia, and we visited all 3 of them. And Holy Trinity was the last one we visited, and it's the place where we felt the most welcome. We fell in love with the sanctuary. You know, we felt really embraced by the architecture of the sanctuary and the friendliness of the people as well. It made us feel like we belonged here.
This is kind of like a rock. You know, I love to come here because I'm at peace. You know, I can sit there all by myself and be totally happy on the inside, you know.